But first, Australians were told this week that the terror threat had been raised from possible to probable. And we were also told that probable didn't mean inevitable. And we were told the decision to move from possible to probable, though not inevitable, was not based on any specific information. It was more of a general sort of vibe on the part of our security agencies. The description of where the probable threat will probably come from, well, that was sort of vibey as well. The Australian newspaper reported the nation's domestic spy chief warned on Monday that surging levels of personal grievance and intolerance were driving disaffected Australians to violence. Right. Well, I had surging levels of personal grievance after being cut off at a roundabout yesterday, and I can also be quite intolerant, gluten, dairy and the like. Is that what the domestic spy chief means? Am I someone they should be monitoring? Personal grievances about what specifically will drive Australians to violence? The interest rates, power bills, the price of a meat pie at the MCG? Our spy agencies are going to be watching everyone. ASIO boss Mike Burgess then went on to blame
extremist ideologies, conspiracies, misinformation are flourishing in the online ecosystem, and young Australians are particularly vulnerable.
OK, social media amplifies ideologies for sure, but which ideologies are we concerned about? What are these extremist ideologies that have now made a terror attack probable? Extreme Christianity? Well, that's going to make everyone extremely likely to love their neighbour and bless those who persecute them. It doesn't sound like an extreme ideology that makes a terror attack probable or even possible. I can't ever remember seeing a Presbyterian church deacon wearing an explosive vest. Can you? Maybe I've just never met an extremist Presbyterian. I don't know. And what of those probable terrorists motivated by conspiracy theories? I've got a friend who believes the moon landing was a conspiracy. Prior to the ASIO chief's warning, I just thought my friend was nuts. Now I'm afraid she's the kind of person ASIO is worried about. Do I make a citizen's arrest if she brings it up again? On a personal note, I'm pretty certain big tech and the CIA interfered in the 2020 US presidential election, tipping it in Joe Biden's favour. Hang on, that's not a conspiracy theory. But back to the ASIO boss.
A threat level of probable means we assess there is a greater than 50% chance of an onshore attack or planning in the next 12 months. The most likely terrorist attack involves an individual or a small group using rudimentary weapons such as knives, improvised explosives or a gun. A resurgence in the number of minors embracing violent extremism.
OK, so over the next year, we're looking for young people with a grievance. Well, that really narrows it down. But here's a clue.
So Gaza is not the cause of this rising, but actually I acknowledge, yes, it's a significant driver. It's driven more emotion and heat into society. We've had violent protests before in this country, so we roll through waves. This is not new, it's a phenomenon, and obviously ASIO's job is not to look at people who protest. Lawful dissent, lawful protests are fine. It's the people who think violence is the answer. Not just because of Gaza, though. In this current environment, violence is more likely at protests.
Aha, so the rising terror threat could have something to do with the war in Gaza. Still a little vague, but like that old game of hot and cold I used to play with my kids when they were looking for something, we might say getting warmer. And of course, rising tensions in the Middle East is another way of saying what we all know but cannot say. And insisting it's not the only factor is really just another way of saying that it is. Of course, we'll play along and pretend like those extremist Salvation Army folk pose a threat with their tambourines and brass bands and shouts of "Help the poor in Jesus' name." Anyway, the Australian newspaper went on to report that the heightened threat level follows 8 terrorist attacks or disruptions of terror plots since April, including the Wakeley church stabbing by a 16-year-old boy, which triggered more than 24 further arrests. Yeah, if only we had some kind of clue as to what may have triggered the Wakeley church stabbing. All I'll say at this point is that extremism by disaffected Presbyterians can't be discounted. And by the way, the more than 24 further arrests referred to, triggered by the church stabbing, well, they were for mostly rioting, not for terrorism. It's an unfortunate but inescapable fact of life that people tend to riot when their church minister is stabbed in the eye by a, person with a grievance that may or may not be related to a conspiracy theory they saw on social media while researching extreme, vegetarianism. Or maybe there was something else going on. It's far more likely, by which I mean probable, that was the motivation was something more sinister, by which I mean more vague. The Prime Minister called on Australians to lower the temperature of debate, which I would do if only I knew what the debate was. But then he blasted the Greens Party, which he has accused Labor of complicity in genocide, saying its encouragement of protesters who've blockaded and vandalised Labor MPs' offices is designed to trigger a partisan response. OK, so we're worried that promoting the idea of genocide being committed against the Palestinians might encourage intolerant people with personal grievances who believe in wild conspiracy theories to commit violent acts of terror. Now I know what ASIO is worried about, though they've made sure I'm not certain enough to actually say it, which begs the question, if we're not even allowed to say it, what chance do we have of stopping it? Whatever it is, we're likely to be talking about probably, I guess.